Hey guys, so I wanted to talk about my thoughts and my experience so far with Windows 11. So it's actually pretty nice. It has its issues, but it looks great and it functions well. So I have been having fun using it too. And the hardware you choose is going to affect your experience, and you are going to need to tweak some things and some subvert some other things to really get the most out of it. It's far from perfect, but it's still pretty good actually. Now, I do still spend most of my time on Linux and Mac OS these days, but I'm still using Windows. And I like to keep current. Plus, it's just fun to play with different systems. Another thing, one of the another big advantage of this is that these days it's easy to just download directly from Microsoft. You don't have to order a CD. You don't even have to sign up for a Microsoft account to do this. You can just download it directly from Microsoft. It's really convenient. Um, I I'm 99% sure you don't need a Microsoft account. I'm pretty sure I wasn't logged in when I downloaded it. But any case, it's free. You can just download it and install it. It does want you to activate it, but yeah, you can just download and install it. It's pretty convenient. Yeah, gone are the days when you had to either order a CD or pirate it or whatever else, right? So, any case, yeah, it actually looks pretty nice too. It comes with a Windows Terminal, which is nice. Um, this is the same issues as Windows 10. Is that same issue where it just updates all the time and it's really inconvenient, and you'll be in the middle of something and and it's stuck on an update, like you have to log into that Zoom meeting, and then and you're like, I gotta log into my computer and do this now, and you're like, oh, it's in the middle of an update, I gotta wait and reboot my computer a few times or whatever else, right? So it still has that issue. I don't think that's ever going to go away. It's just going to get worse if anything. It's just a trend in modern computing, worse with some systems and some companies than with others. So, some companies kind of force you to do this and some not so much, right? So, in any case, it does require a Microsoft account and no longer supports local accounts unless you create a custom install disk. So, apparently, as of a more recent update to Windows 11, it used to be if you had Windows 11 Pro, you could have a Microsoft account, and or you could have a local account, and you didn't have to sign up for a Microsoft account or log in with your Microsoft account, even though I would have one anyways. But that's one of the reasons I wanted to go with Pro. But apparently the newer versions, even with the Pro, you still need a Microsoft account. You can't just create a local account. So you're gonna have to, when you're installing it, you have to log in with your Microsoft account, which is kind of terrible. But you can subvert that. That's what I was talking about when I said you need to subvert some things. You can actually create a custom install disk using Rufus that will make it so that your installer does not need to have a Microsoft account, and it does a lot of other convenient things for you too. So I actually did a video about that really recently, so go check that out. Just check out the recent videos on my channel shortly before this one. But yeah, I have a video showing you how to do that. It's pretty easy. It's just an option that comes with Rufus. You can probably figure it out. It's kind of hard to miss the options for it. But any case, yeah, another thing, I've seen apps stop working until you update them. The one that I'm specifically thinking of is Clipchamp. So I went to launch Clipchamp, and it's like it comes up with just a big message that says you can't run this application until you update it. You can't even just work with the old version or anything. And it's not like it's not like it's an online game that has to connect and interact with other people. It's just a video editor. Now, apparently, I've seen with my brief Googling as to what Clipchamp is, looks like it's kind of like an iMovie competitor for Windows. So it's kind of something that Windows has been missing and needs. I haven't done a lot of testing with it, so I don't know how good it is, but it's kind of messed up that they do that with the updates. It's just really forcing updates on you. And I think it's overall just really a bad way of doing things. And it's just kind of a bad trend that it seems like this is more of a Windows 11 way of doing things, and it's just not the direction to go in. Not that all apps are done that way. Now, it is still, Windows is still an important OS for gaming, but Linux is really getting close, and it's getting close to overtaking it as far as I can tell. With Steam pouring so much money into Steam OS and stuff like that. So yeah, the drivers, the driver support, the emulation and everything else supporting gaming on Linux is just coming a long way. So before you know it, you won't need Windows for that. But for now, it is still the OS to use, I think, if you're into gaming. So very important use case for Windows is gaming. Now, what else? So what the other thing I wanted to talk about. So that's basically my thoughts as to one other thing before I get into story time with Windows, but yeah, one thing that I think is pretty cool with Windows these days, and you can do this with Windows 10 too, but Windows 10 or 11, but it's package management. So for one, you have the Microsoft Store, which originally wasn't, at least in my impression, wasn't that great. It didn't have anything worth looking at, but now you can get a lot of like regular everyday packages from the Microsoft Store. It's actually pretty, or what do they call it, the Microsoft Store or the Windows Store? Well, either way, the store that comes on your desktop, it actually comes with a lot of pretty useful stuff, and it was actually I found it to be pretty convenient. But any case, the other thing I really liked was I liked Chocolatey, and apparently they have Winget. I guess I'm a little bit out of touch, but apparently Winget is the official solution from Microsoft, and I think they had a different name for it on the Microsoft Store, and you actually have to download it, but at least it's the official app from Microsoft. I'm still using Chocolatey right now, but I do need to test out Winget. So yeah, we have two great package managers, not counting the Windows Store, or not counting the Windows Store. You have two great command line package managers, which are pretty awesome, and I thought that was pretty terrific. So that combined with the Windows Terminal and how great PowerShell is, got to give Windows a lot of credit for PowerShell. Microsoft did a great job with that. So yeah, I think that those things are pretty nice, and it's making the Windows experience really great for me, anyways. So, anyways, so my first experience with Windows 11 was with my wife's PC. So I originally installed Windows 11 on my wife's new PC that I built somewhat recently. Now, this was the first time I actually purchased a Windows license. In the past, I had either, I've either, I remember way back in the college days, I don't know if I should say that I've ever done this, but not that, yeah, I remember with a lot of people, piracy was a common thing, but I mean, that was many, many years ago. Besides that, usually, a lot of PCs will come with Windows installed on it, but also I've just been installing Linux on a lot of my stuff too. So combination of those things, I haven't actually had to purchase Windows until very, very recently. So any case, purchased Windows because, I do have, the money to throw at it, and I just wanted, yeah, it was the way to go. Any case. So yeah, recently built a brand new PC, purchased Windows Pro, and this was before the update that made it so you didn't have to install so you could still use a local account if you had Windows Pro, and I was able to set that up at the time. Apparently, you can't do that anymore. Any case, a little bit more on that later. But yeah, first time I purchased an actual Windows license. Now, I purchased the Pro version because at the time that would allow me to create. Yeah, so yeah, I pretty much covered that. Yeah, so yeah, so it looks like what else did I want to cover here? Yeah, I'm basically just talking about it, and I had notes written down telling me that I'm supposed to talk about that, and I kind of got ahead of myself there. So, any case, yeah, so this is just another example of updates working against the user. So, any case, you can actually get around this by creating a custom Windows 11 disk, as I mentioned previously in this video. I recently put a video about that. But yeah, you can circumvent that, which is something you should do. So even if you're paying for Windows, you pay for the license and you activate it with the license that you paid for, you still should circumvent that. Like even if you pay for it, you still kind of have to circumvent these restrictions and problems. So yeah, just something to be aware of. But in any case, Windows 11 has been working fine for my wife so far with her new hardware. So her experience there has been really good. Now, my desktop PC was the second thing I had attempted to install Windows 11 on this. So I've tried installing Windows 11 on. So I have it. I should actually talk a little bit about. I'll yeah. Tell you a little bit about. I didn't put this in like the script for the video, but basically I have a desktop PC that I'm basically using it as a Windows workstation, or sorry, a Linux workstation. But I have 5 hard drives in it right now, like 2 M.2 drives and 3 regular old-fashioned SATA drives. And I wanted to just try out different Linux distros and stuff like that, just to make them first-class citizens and not install them in a VM. So like I have Ubuntu Linux, Arch Linux, and I have a Linux from scratch. I'm going to do another video about that coming up soon. So remember to hit that subscribe button. You don't want to miss that stuff. But yeah, I have multiple different Linux distros on it. I'm going to be building Gen 2 pretty soon. But I have one hard drive reserved for Windows. Right, I wanted to have Windows on it on my workstation. So mostly I use it for Linux stuff, but I want to be running Windows too. I used to have a dedicated Windows machine. I ended up rebuilding that and giving that to my kids. But so now I have this one desktop tower that I'm using as my Linux workstation. I had no Windows box for a while. Kind of still wanted to use Windows for some things. So any case, that's where my experience with Windows 11 comes in with my desktop PC, my current desktop PC. So any case, I tried installing Windows 11 on this somewhat powerful desktop system. It's a little bit older, but still pretty powerful. And it has the power to run Windows 11, but it didn't have the required TPM chip. So I ran into that issue. I figured I'd give it a try and see if I could install it, and I ran into an issue with the TPM chip. So I actually ordered a TPM chip on Amazon. Now, I did a video on this of me failing with this. I'm going to post that video after this video that you're watching now. I'm going to be posting this video before I post that video. I have the footage for that kind of saved on a disk, and I've been kind of putting off editing that video for a while, but I need to get that one out. But any case, so more on that. Just hit that subscribe button. More good stuff coming up. Anyways, yeah. So I ordered this TPM chip off of Amazon. Wasn't too expensive, and it actually solved the problem. So the Windows installer was no longer complaining that I needed a TPM chip. It wasn't saying, "Hey, you don't meet the requirements anymore." So yeah, it's this tiny little chip that you stick into your system board. I basically insert it into my motherboard. You have to make sure your motherboard has a slot for it. My motherboard did have a slot for it, so I was able to upgrade my motherboard with this TPM chip. Pretty interesting thing. A little weird of an experience, but any case, I installed that, and let's see. I may or may not if I remember, I'll try to put a link in the description of this video. It'll definitely go on the next video that I make specifically about that TPM chip. I'll put a link to where you can pick it up on Amazon, but realistically, you can just go to Amazon and search for it. But any case, so let's see. The TPM chip actually worked, and yeah, I no longer received that error during install. I was still unable to install though, so I ran into other errors which required me to fiddle around with my firmware. So yeah, I messed around with a lot of things like turning Secure Boot on, turning it off, turning on all kinds of like compatibility and legacy modes, and just every setting I could find in my BIOS, or it's the UEFI. It's technically not a BIOS anymore, but in the firmware of the system board, right? I fiddled around with so many things and could not get this thing to boot. I kept getting this one error message saying like I forget the exact wording of it, but any case, yeah, that should probably be in the next. I'm probably going to be pushing this video out about that too. But in any case, kept getting an error message. I eventually did fix it. I'll get to that in a bit. But yeah, yeah, I'll come back to how I fixed that in just a bit. But apparently, it's a kind of common issue with Windows installs. But anyways, yeah. So yeah, after changing all kinds of settings, installing over and over, I was still unable to get it to work. Tried different combinations, blah blah blah, all kinds of stuff I tried did not work, right? So yeah, this was a huge frustrating disappointment, and the plan was eventually to give it another shot with a custom install disk. I figured, a custom install disk, you remove all the restrictions and stuff, it would work. Now That by itself did not work. It was still good to build that disk because it allows me to create a local account, but and it also, oh, the other cool thing about that install disk is that it removes the requirements to have a TPM chip in the first place and gives you a lot of other great stuff. I didn't know this at the time that I purchased the TPM chip, but in any case, really convenient thing. But that's still, I still had a problem, and it kept coming up with an error not letting me install Windows. So I eventually fixed that, and but before I fixed that, I picked up another junk laptop off of eBay for like $55 and installed Windows on that. And I had a whole other experience with that. So I'm going to talk about that next. So I actually had that whole experience with that junk laptop from eBay, and I'm going to have a few videos coming out on that as well. So those are in the queue pending for me to edit and to publish onto YouTube. But yeah, so I had that whole experience before coming back to my desktop and actually finally getting Windows to work. Now, what I ended up having to do to finally get Windows to install and to get past that error that I was receiving is that I basically removed, apparently people were talking about having to do different things, about Windows getting confused about having multiple drives in the system, and they had this issue with Windows 10s in some cases with Windows 11. It was kind of weird. But in any case, I removed all of the extra drives. So remember I said I had like 5 different drives in this system. I removed every single one of those drives, so I had to take out my M2 drives, which is kind of a pain. I hate having to unscrew those. So I removed the M2 drives. I unplugged the extra 2 SATA drives, leaving 1 SATA drive installed, and I booted up off of my USB drive, installed Windows, and it just worked almost magically. Like, when no issues at all, Windows installed. And the fact that I was using the custom installer, I didn't have to answer all the questions like, hey, do you want to have your privacy and all this other stuff. Didn't have to create a Microsoft account, which even if you do want to create that, it's a bit more effort to create it. So it was a huge pain. All this stuff is a huge pain, and I was able to get around it. And yeah, after having removed all the extra drives and only leaving 1 hard drive in the system, easy install. Everything went well, and this is where so my experience, my positive experience with Windows 11 mostly comes from this installation, which I've only just recently, as in like I believe earlier today or last night, I actually had this whole thing installed and working, and it was yeah, it was yeah. So it's been a short time. I've only been working with it for a very short time, but not counting the the junk laptop experience. But it's been really nice on this system. This system has pretty reasonable specs, and yeah, it's been giving me a great experience. So yeah, basically I had to create that custom disk and run it on good hardware, and great Windows 11 experience there. So yeah, just important things to keep in mind. And now I'm going to go ahead and talk about my experience with the I'm calling it a junk laptop. It's kind of a neat laptop, and I've had fun playing with it. But my junk laptop from eBay. Now, so a little quick background on this laptop. It's running an AMD processor. I forget which one right off the top of my head, but it's from 2019, so it's not that old, but and it's recent enough to support Windows 11. But the specs on it are just so low. I have to imagine it's one of the lowest end laptops like almost ever. So it's probably like the most like the bottom line laptop for people who want to save the most money possible. So any case, like it's had its issues. So when I received it from eBay, it was about $55. I still had to purchase the power adapter for it, which I think was like $10 or something like that. And then it had a mechanical hard drive in it, so that was kind of bad. I replaced them. It did come, even though it didn't come with the power adapter, it had enough charge in the battery that I was able to open up the laptop, and it had Windows 11 installed on it when I received it. So I took it out of the box when I received it in the mail from eBay. I was able to open the laptop, power it on, and boot right into Windows 11. So it had it there on the desktop, and it was okay working, a little slow with the mechanical hard drive. So first thing I did was take that out and replace it with an SSD. And this so I replaced that with an SSD, and I actually tested it with Windows 11. Then I wiped it, tested it with Ubuntu a little bit. Um, Actually had better, more consistent performance with Ubuntu, mostly because it doesn't have some certain problems that I'm going to tell you about in a minute with Windows 11. But any case, after installing the SSD on Windows 11, it was working a little. It's a little bit better, um, a little bit better of an experience. But shortly after running the installer, basically Windows 11 would be kind of like frozen right after doing a fresh install. And I checked the performance, and I could see both CPU cores were pretty much pegged, right? It's 100% CPU usage on both CPU cores, and I forget the exact names of the processes, but they're like Windows system processes. And from what I can tell, I haven't investigated too far into what they are or why they're doing it, but basically they're just bringing the system to its knees and making it basically freeze, so you can't click on anything. Um, and you can't like you can barely it's barely responsive. You can barely do anything with it, and it's basically just running really slow. So I was incredibly disappointed with that, even with the SSD in the system, and even with only being a dual core system. I would expect it to, any system tasks you would expect at least one of the cores to handle that, and you should have one free. But yeah, it was. I mean, I wasn't expecting it to be super fast and responsive, but I wasn't expecting it to be this bad and unusable. So that was pretty bad. But what I did is I ended up just leaving it and coming back to it later. I forget if it was like 6 hours, 8 hours, or left it overnight, something like that. But I left it for a while and came back a while later, and it was actually performing a little bit better after that. And I started, testing it out a little bit and doing some things with it, and it was actually performing relatively well, and I didn't have any real issues with it. So it seems like after the initial installation, it's trying to run some. I imagine it's running some. It's probably updating something in the backup and not telling you in the background and not telling you, and it's probably it's probably like indexing files and maybe doing a virus scan, or who knows what else, right? But it's probably doing some housekeeping stuff in the background that the system just isn't powerful enough to handle. So while it's doing that stuff, it's going to run so slow that you can't do anything. Now on my more powerful desktop, that was not an issue at all, because it just has the power to run all that stuff in the background and barely have an issue with the CPU. Not only is the CPU powerful enough to just handle that and do other stuff at the same time, but it's going to get that stuff done faster and have it out of the way sooner also, right? So any case, so that this is what I mean when I say running on better hardware is going to give you a better experience. It's not just that Windows it's not just that like an arbitrary requirement that they need you to have newer hardware, or that they need you to have the TPM chip. Now the TPM chip and stuff like that is kind of pointless, and it's not just even supported hardware can have a problem, and unsupported hardware can be more than powerful enough to run it. So that's kind of arbitrary and unfortunate that they set those restrictions. But yeah, any case, if you have powerful hardware, you'll have a good experience, or you may have a good experience. If you don't have the most powerful hardware, you might not have the best experience while it's running the stuff in the background. Any case, finished running the stuff in the background, and it was working pretty well after that. And I was able to test it out and do a few things with it, which was nice. And then I let it just sit for a couple weeks or so without having it plugged in. And when I powered the laptop on, it still had a pretty good charge in it. So I said that says something good about Windows being able to sleep and about the hardware itself. But in any case, powered it on, still had plenty of charge in the battery, and went to use it, but it looks like it was attempting to run an update when I tried to log into it, which was kind of bad. But it finished doing the update relatively quick. It is the normal annoying Windows update thing. But when it finished the update, I noticed I started using it and went to test some things out, and it was running so slow. It was the same problem. It was ridiculously slow and barely usable. Like you couldn't click on anything. I was really frustrating. But eventually I just set it down and left it, and came back later. And when I came back, basically when it was freezing up the CPU usage, I checked it again. The cores, the memory usage was fine, but the cores were basically 100% for both cores. It was a dual core system, cores both at 100%. Pretty terrible. But I left it for a while, came back again much later, hours and hours later, and it was done. And CPU usage is down pretty low, and the system was pretty responsive. Not like a zippy fast system or anything like that. It's not a fast system by any means, but it's completely fine for doing basic stuff. Like editing text, browsing the web, any normal basic stuff you'd want to do. It's basically totally fine, and I could do all the normal stuff I wanted to do without any real issues at all. I was able to install things, test things out, and it was pretty good. So it was not bad. So the one seems like the performance issue only happens after it's done an update, and it has to do, whether it's some re-indexing or whatever it's doing, it has to do that, and it slows things down a lot. So I mean, if you happen to know what that is that's causing that, do leave a comment down below. I haven't investigated much further than this, but yeah, that was my experience. It was kind of not ideal on that. And when I had installed Ubuntu on this same laptop, I did not have that issue. And it seems like it's not like the fastest laptop. It doesn't like it's not like it magically makes it super fast, but it was pretty usable from the start with Ubuntu. So I feel like it was a little bit better of an experience running Ubuntu on this laptop. So let's see if I had anything else to cover. So I was kind of just going from the top of my head with my description of my experience with that laptop, but I did write all these notes here telling me what I basically scripted this video out, and I have all these notes telling me what I'm supposed to talk about. So let's see what I may have missed. So lowest power thing you could possibly get with a couple cores. Started with a mechanical hard drive. Yeah, so what else? Oh yeah, so with this laptop, I did have to install it using a Microsoft account, because at the time I did not realize you could create this custom install disk. Now I do have the custom install disk, but at the time I didn't, so I used my Microsoft account to I used that to log into this, which was a bit of a pain. I didn't like it, and any case. So what else? Yeah, initially crazy slow. Yeah, barely responded, etc., etc. Yeah, I basically covered all of that stuff, and suspected it's due to, yeah. All right. So let's see, what else did I want to cover? Still has a charge after not responding. So I think that's mostly, yeah. So yeah, when the CPU usage, so yeah, I barely, yeah. So once one way I wanted to describe this is that once the CPU usage came down, once it was done doing all of that stuff, it worked well enough that I barely remembered that the laptop that I was using is actually a piece of junk, and it kind of is. Now, I actually, if you want discount laptops, I actually would recommend purchasing used laptops on, like, if you just want to be able to do basic stuff, web development, maybe even some coding or whatever else, whatever stuff you want to do, I would recommend buying discount laptops on eBay. You can get some pretty terrific laptops for cheap. You're gonna have to know what you're buying and look at the specs and stuff like that. For sure, I think the sweet spot is probably around 120 if you want something that's pretty good for doing most things. Not going to be the best for gaming or for video editing, but it's going to work well for most use cases. And not going to be super fast all the time, but it's going to work pretty well. I would recommend buying used laptops at around 120. You can buy PC-based laptops or Apple laptops and then just install Linux on them. Usually the really old Apple stuff, it's not going to support a new version of Mac OS. You may as well just wipe them and run Linux on them. But any case, if you want to spend a little bit more, you want to get up towards like $200, you can get some really nice stuff. Still not something you're going to be, it's not going to be the best thing for like editing, editing video in 4K or something like that. It's going to be pretty slow for that, and maybe not like a monster gaming machine or anything like that, but you can get some pretty decent stuff out there. you can get something that'll be perform really nicely for a couple $100. But in any case, you can also get some things that have a lot of damage to have damage or have other issues. So you got to be careful with what you buy on eBay. In any case, yeah, this one particularly was like the cheapest thing I could possibly get that runs Windows 11, and it was good for testing at least. Other interesting thing I should mention about this particular laptop is that it was so it had a CD drive in it, and it's built in 20. I don't know if they're still. I don't think most laptops come with CD drives. I'm not sure how common that is these days, or if you can find them like that. But it's from 2019, and it had a CD drive in it. So it had a hard drive and a CD drive. So when I opened it up, this was actually an easy laptop to open it up. Not a whole lot to watch out for. Just remove the screws and pull the back plate off, and you have access to basically everything, right? So in any case, replace the mechanical hard drive with an SSD, and I removed the CD drive just because it was kind of in the way and I just did not need it to be in there. Now my plan is to install another SSD in place of that CD drive, but I need an adapter for it so I needed this special SATA adapter. It was using some kind of strange mini SATA connector that is, I think, proprietary or something, but or just not that common. I'm not sure, but one way or another, I was able to find it, and I was able to order an adapter so that I can. I had to wait for the adapter to come in, but now that I have it, the plan is to use this adapter to plug the second SSD in place of the. I'm going to plug it in place of the of where the CD drive was, and it's hopefully this is going to work. I think it will. I actually have another video planned to do this coming up really soon, maybe this weekend, and we'll see how it goes. But the plan is to install Ubuntu or some other Linux distro on there, and just to make this thing dual boot with dual hard drive. So it's going to be a dual hard drive laptop without the CD drive, which is obviously fine. But in any case, yeah, that was my experience with the piece of junk laptop. But yeah, running more powerful hardware, you won't even notice the issues with Windows. Yeah, so yeah. And let's see, what else did I want to cover? I think that's most of the stuff I wanted to cover. Let's see. Try to get it installed, more powerful desktop, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, so that's basically everything I wanted to cover with Windows 11. So it has its issues. These days, it still has the update problem, the problem doing where it does updates on you all the time, and it's a huge pain. It still has other issues, and now it's making you use a Microsoft account. Some apps on it are gonna force you to update, otherwise you can't even launch the app. That kind of thing is a little bit annoying. There's a lot of annoying stuff, and sometimes these days I feel like Microsoft is just not taking the user experience as seriously as other companies like, say, Apple. Now, Apple has their issues too. They want to force you to do things the Apple way, but they make a lot of nice stuff too. And a lot of people like to criticize them, but I think they're pretty terrific. And they do, even though they force you to do things their way, they do take user experience very seriously. And I kind of feel like Microsoft just doesn't do that these days. Although I have found my experience, despite the fact that you have to subvert some things and tweak some things, I found my experience with Windows to be pretty good. I actually, so long as you subvert those few things and whatever else, and so long as you're running on good hardware, it's pretty good. Now, if I had to use that low spec laptop as a daily driver, I could do it, but it would be pretty frustrating. If I were using that laptop as a daily driver, it would definitely be running Ubuntu. That may not be an issue if I dual boot it, but in any case, if I only had that laptop with one hard drive, I would definitely just install Linux on it. But yeah, so Windows 11 isn't always going to work best on the lowest spec machines, but if you have the specs and you want to be running Linux, or you want to be running Windows, and especially if you're using it for gaming, or you just happen to like Windows, whatever reason you have for running Windows, yeah, if you have a powerful enough machine, it runs great, and it's like I found the interface to be pretty smooth, pretty nice, and a lot of the ways you do things are pretty nice. What with the package management systems and the file explorer, how you move things around, how you they have an option where you right click on it and there's this tiny little icon that you click on to rename things that I thought was a pretty slick way of doing things. Just tiny little things that make it a little bit nice. The menus and stuff look nice. The edges are kind of smooth and nice looking. So overall, it feels like a nice experience. I was able to just click and search for my printer, and which I would really expect it to. I would expect almost anything to be able to do these days. Like my Mac finds my printer, my Linux box finds my printer, everything can find my printer. So if those can find it, I really, really, really expect Windows to find it automatically without having to download anything. So I mean, I would expect it to be able to find my printer without having to, go on the web and search for special drivers or something. And it does do that very well. It was very easy to do, very convenient, just magically finds my printer for me. So that was nice. And one other thing I should mention with my workstation, my higher spec workstation, the one where I had the great experience on it. One issue I do have an NVIDIA card in there, and it didn't require me to install drivers to get Windows up and running. But when I installed OBS on this to capture video on the system, OBS wouldn't let me capture video until I updated the drivers. I would go to capture video and it'd say, nope, you need updated drivers to do this. So a little bit of an issue, but it just came up with an error message that gives you the link to click on to go get the new drivers, and it was a non-issue. So no big deal there, but yeah, I had to update my NVIDIA drivers. Bit of a pain. Side note, NVIDIA is not the card you would want to go with if you're running Linux. I am using my NVIDIA card on my Linux system, and it's been working pretty fine for games and for whatever else. But yeah, generally these days people recommend AMD video cards, especially if you're using Linux. And side note, a lot of people say that if you are using the AMD cards, you can, in a lot of cases, you'll get better performance running a Windows game on Linux than you would running it on Windows. So anyways, just a side note. But yeah, anyways, Windows 11 experience, that's basically what my experience has been. I guess I pretty much covered out everything, all of my experiences with it and my thoughts on it. That's pretty much everything that I wanted to cover. So if you found this interesting, or what, maybe it helps someone somehow. I don't know how this would be really that educational unless you're just wondering what Windows 11 is like and don't feel like trying it. But one way or another, hopefully you enjoyed watching this. And yeah, leave a comment down below. Give me a thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button. And definitely hit that bell icon, because we have a ton of other great content coming out. We do like 3D printers. We do a lot of Linux stuff. We are doing a lot of Windows and Mac OS stuff, doing things with like Docker. We do servers, coding, do a lot of automation stuff. Maybe we'll be doing some AI stuff coming up soon. Do like Raspberry Pis, electronics, 3D printers, networking, lots of great stuff you're not going to want to miss out on. So hit the subscribe button and hit the little bell icon, otherwise YouTube doesn't let you know when we come out with new videos. And that's pretty much it for today. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys on that next video.